Okay, so the big warehouse. So what I want to do is, before I show you how I built this, which will be more of a sort of a summary and a revisit of the same method I used on the brewery prior to this, just a little ways back chronologically under videos. I just want to say a couple of things, especially to those that have been wondering, when is he going to paint? When is he going to paint? Okay, so I don't want to paint any of these buildings until they're all finished. Like I have stated that earlier on, and there's reasons for that. The first reason is I want to get this archived section one with all the buildings being white, unpainted. I mean, how many opportunities do you get to do that, right? Not very often, right? And so that's important that I get the section one painted so they stand out visually. And in terms of me doing an article or a video down the road, that's what I always wanted. And then once I have it photographed in video, then I can go on and paint randomly or do anything I want, and I've achieved that goal. So this is finished now. So this is the second last building. So I have one more Axton steel, which is on the far end, which isn't going to take that long to build. I already have the materials for it, like the siding. It's just a very simple building with no doors or windows on it, so that are visible. And the only unique thing that I'll probably find interesting, I guess, is the sort of embossed lettering, like the name Axton. Like I'll be cutting those out of styrene plastic as well. And then I think the roof is a little bit different. And then there's a couple of minor support buildings down in the corner, but they'll be blocked by trees anyway. So I wanted to get all the building flats, including the barge slip, photographed unpainted. So once that's done, then it's open season on the painting, which I'm as anxious as anybody else is to get to as well. And there'll be a big binge of it, believe me. So so let's have a look at how I built this. I'll cover some of the things. I'll try to keep it a little more brief, obviously, because most of it was covered during the brewery build, except for these light boxes are unique. I'll show you how I built those. The bay doors I just cover briefly, and the main doors like exit doors and so on, I cover that as well. And the landings and the staircase I'll revisit quickly. And then I just show one clip of the brass railings. Like, just so you know, these are from brass 0.5 mil rod, right? Because of this. That's what's going to happen when I move models on and off the layout, and they get busted. right? And if you build them out of brass, it's not hard to do. It's actually quite simple, really. Just to sweat solder the rod together once it's drilled and mounted right onto the landing and the stairs, which holds it in place. Okay, so let's have a look at how I did this, and then I'll probably do the second part or final once the other building is finished accent, because then I'm going to have all these finals. I'm going to have the paint final for the brewery, paint final for the big warehouse and the small one, and then accent steel. So that's 4 flats I'll be painting. And then the barge slip and ramp, there's a couple of things I have yet to do on that, like railings and 2 kiosks. So I'll fit that in there somewhere along the way. And then I've already started trees and so on for section 2, the transition. And yeah, all the sceneries, the base scenery anyway, is basically done on section 1. So we're getting really close. And I'm excited, and it's going to be a lot of fun once all these buildings are in place and weathered up and painted. And we really got a big scene to run some trains in and to have a sort of wider look at the whole feel and concept of the layout, okay? Okay, so you notice how I'm capping the ends and the returns here, because I want to make sure that when I establish my line for a panel, like I don't want to do that last and then have to run this out so it sticks out. I mean, I don't know, I can't tell by this photograph, but no, you can't really see it there, but the line, the actual tilt-up line would go like that, see? Not like that. And if you glue these panels first and then cap this, that's what's going to happen. You know, and you don't want to have to fill that line if you can help it. It's just easier to do it like this. And then you can start your line there and then run your panels off of that. Whatever the width is that you establish here, which I might have to revise a bit so they spread out evenly along the length. Okay, so I just want to talk about laying up these tilt-up panels on this long 3.5 foot span warehouse. So the one thing that I think I mentioned it before when I did the brewery tutorial is I talked about laying up these panels and how you're going to run into run out. Okay, so I have to determine the width of these panels first. Like these are 55 millimeter from the brewery, but I don't know if they'll be compatible with this particular model, only because I want to make sure that they're, you know, they spread out fairly symmetrically through the whole span, because that's the way the prototype building is. So I'll just show you, like as an example, like this higher section of the warehouse. So just for the purposes of width, I'll use this shorter one. So what I want to do is I want to lay the first panel up like this, which is 55 millimeters wide. But the problem is if I multiply this 5 times, okay, I end up with about anywhere from 5 to 7 millimeters left over here. So I can put a longer one here and you might not notice it. Or if you want to keep it consistent, prototypically, you'll have to add an extra millimeter to this. So it's 55, so I'll make it 56. That way you're factoring in the 1 millimeter gap that you're going to put between each one when you glue each one in place. Like one there, then you put a strip there, lay this one in, pull the strip out. That way you have an enhanced tilt-up slab line, which is what you want for a big, long, flat, boring kind of warehouse. I mean, there'll be lots of canvas here to make it interesting, because you can use artistic license and some revision, because everything changes, right? Like this location has changed over the last 20 years, and like this building, man, has it ever changed? Believe me, it has. I mean, it was a functional building 30 years ago with two spurs serving it by rail. Now there's no rail servicing it, and there's air conditioners and new fire escape and catwalk stuff going on. It's crazy, right? So you can do whatever you want there, but we want to get this tilt-up look established. So you can do it that way. Whereas with this one here, I might change these up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this 55 millimeter strip all the way down and see what it looks like when I get to the end. Because I don't want a really narrow piece here, you know. So I might have to revise this a bit, like maybe add a few millimeters to it or whatever. And notice how I put these register mark lines here with the square, right? So I know here it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'll lay this panel in like this. And I'll make another mark. And these marks will be good for checking run out. As I mentioned before, like when you start gluing these panels in, like here's what happens. This is why you can't just depend on the math in terms of the layup. Right, like math will give you the the figures that you need for the size of pieces for sure, but you're going to run into this. Like I'm going to exaggerate here, but see, like when you start chasing panels down a long span like this, are you going to get run out? So in order to correct that, you can measure from the original spot back here to the edge here, or you can put a square on it to make sure it's square as you're going along, right? But if these aren't square back here, you're going to run out where you're going to lose that gap in between the panels. So you want to try to keep that consistent. So just by having pencil marks here, you can sort of like it'll warn you ahead of time. Oops, it looks like I'm running out a bit there, and you can cheat the panel a bit, just so that you get consistent gaps between each panel down the full span of the warehouse. Okay. Okay, so before I lay up these panels or determine actually the size of them, a couple of things I need to do first on the substructure, okay, of the warehouse. I need to consider how it's going to fit the layout footprint and how it's going to operate. Okay, so this is where, like this building was selectively compressed, right, lengthwise. There was a revision of where I added this track in here as for the purposes of optional operations on a smaller shelf style layout, right? So this is a team track for the steel company over this way, and then it's also a runaround. This is the main, and then in the foreground is the service tracks for the barge slip, which offers a lot of operational opportunities, not to mention the brewery down that way, right, in behind the tree line. But I want to be able to service two 60-foot Gunderson boxcars here. Now, the original building has bay doors that service 50-footers, and they run all the way along this building, which I'm not going to do, obviously, because it wouldn't look right if I had more doors down this way where there's a switch that's been added. Although I could leave a door there and treat the switch or the turnout as a revision later on, like in the world of River Road. Like there's so many things going on. But I want two doors here to service two 60-foot boxcars, because I'm in 2010 period now, right? And they could have done that with the original building. Now, if I'm going to use these panels, which I'm probably going to have to widen them, like these look good on the brewery, but they're not going to work too well here. Like the width of the door will fit fine, but I got to make sure that the door doesn't, or the opening doesn't cross over these two tilt-ups, because that's not the way they did it. That's not the way tilt-up buildings are not engineered that way. They wouldn't compromise a concrete slab like that. So they're going to run the door, it would be cut into the center of a slab or offset a bit. So I need to factor that in now, see? Because now I'm dealing with the revised footprint in the model for the purposes of revised operations, and I'm dealing with compression linear wise. So this is where you got to do hands-on revisions to make the model work in the smaller footprint space, right? Okay, so that's what I have to do. I'm going to have to make sure that it looks like these panels, I'm going to make them a little bit wider, and then I got to make sure that they accommodate a door there and a door here without crossing over the gap in between the two slabs. Okay. Okay, so I've decided now how wide my panels are going to be, and they're going to be a little bit wider than these ones here, which are 55-ish, but now I'm going to make them to 58. So, and I'm going to run them from the right to left here so I can accommodate, because I have a boxcar door there and one there, and so I need to cheat this line over. So that'll get me where I'm over those positions where I can cut the door opening and stay in the center of these panels. It doesn't have to be perfectly centered, but the bay door shouldn't cross the slab line, like I mentioned earlier. Okay. And so I took this sheet here, which is 60 thou, and I just scribed with a square 58 millimeters. Couple passes with a knife, and all you do is snap them off like this. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to pre-cut this door opening out of the plywood first. There'll be 3 of them. Well, 2 at least anyway. I might do another third one further down. But I want to do this one first because I want to make sure these panels, like it sits in the center of this panel, and it at least lines up to the double doors on a boxcar that's narrower anyway. So this is a little bit trickier than you think in terms of placing a door on a compressed building when you have limited space, okay? So I'm going to drill a hole first.
A few holes.
Okay, so now I'm going to cut it out, right? Okay, so there's the door opening, and this is a little bit higher and wider than the actual opening that I'm going to cut in the plastic panel. And I took down this part here, the thickness of this panel, so I can glue in a floor. In case I want to open this door, you want to be able to see some hint of a floor there, maybe stack some pallets or whatever, okay? So the height of this here to the edge of the boxcar. The boxcar floor would be just a hint above that, but this will get packed out with a sheet of 60 thou plastic, so it'll bring it nice and level. Or even if this is a little bit lower, if you want, you can always pack it out to match the height of your boxcar. But make sure this opening is larger than your panel. Not so large as to exceed the width of the panel, right? Like that's about as far as you want to go, but with this panel here, so it's going to be smaller, so you'll be able to see the edge of this concrete slab, not this thick, unscale-like thickness of the plywood, right? And the same for the top. So a panel will go like that, and then the next panel will lay in here like this. And if I want, I can trim this down just a bit, take a little bit off this. It won't matter, you won't notice really, so that it sits nice and center in this concrete tilt-up slab. Okay. Okay, so here's one door cut out. I'm going to do three. This one is the one furthest to the left, which won't get serviced that much, only because there's a turnout close to this, and I don't want to block the turnout if it's not being used as a full-length spur. But the other two further down this way can be fully serviced no matter what. So, and these doors are not all symmetrically spaced. There's some that are like really close together. Some are spread out more. So this one I just adjusted to fit the panels. Like see where my panels have run out right here to here now. So the next panel lays in here. So I want to make sure that the opening doesn't cross the seam here, right? So this will work good in here. So I just cut that opening out, and then I got the option for an open door. Okay. I just drill holes, and I just, for taking out heavy, chunks of plastic. Okay. And then I just clean it up with a knife, and I get a nice line, and I scribe the line first on the draft line. Scribe it 2 or 3 times really good, and then I just knife to the line. So that's how I'm going to do those, right? And then you can't see the opening when you get this trimmed up nice. You just see the thickness of the concrete slab. Okay. Okay, so you can see there's going to be 3 doors here. I didn't really need this door. It might not be functional, but 3 always looks better than 2. Like any odd number, like in terms of artistic elements, tend to look better than even numbers. So the 3 doors across this span, the lower span of the building, it'll help balance it out better visually. And then you can see I worked from this, the left, down to keep these panels fairly consistent. I had to put a little bit wider panel in here just to cheat this panel over the center of the door opening, as I mentioned earlier. And then I've worked from this end this way. So what I'll do is now I'll work in 3 panels in the center here, which should pretty much line up by the time I put the spacing in there. And if it doesn't, I'll just tweak one of them. Okay, so here's the final space, and as you can see, the pieces I cut, you can see how much I'm out there, see? So that's a bit too much of a gap, so I just took a piece of scrap and just got a custom size one that I'll drop in there like that. And just square it up on the bottom and the top.